Hello and welcome to Eco Africa, the environment show brought to you by Channels TV in Nigeria, DW in Germany and NTV right here in Uganda. I am Sandra Twinobdu and with me, as always, is my co-presenter in Nigeria. How are you, Chris?
Very well, thank you, Sandra. Preservation, that's a great word to describe the focus of today's episode. It can be applied to both resources and our amazing animal kingdom. Let's start off with a brief look at what's coming up. We'll hear about how Ivory Coast is turning organic waste into energy. Find out why wildlife conservation is about much more than just numbers. And see how a solar rover is protecting trees in Morocco. If you have a special four-legged friend in your life, chances are pretty high it's a dog. They're considered good companions and fiercely loyal to their owners. That's why it's so interesting that people tend to have the opposite impression of wild dogs, viewing them as destructive and unpredictable. But they too have something to contribute to the ecosystems in which they live. That's why conservationists in Zimbabwe are fighting hard to protect one especially beautiful species found there.
This pretty pup looks like a peaceful fellow, but this species' bad reputation has led to it being one of the most endangered in the world. Just 130 African painted dogs live in the Hwange National Park in northwest Zimbabwe. Here, most people only view the animals as a threat to their cattle and otherwise useless. A local NGO is working to change that perception. David Kuvawoga is a team lead.
If you have painted dogs in an ecosystem, it means your prey base is good. If you have a good prey base, it also means, it means your producers, your grass, your trees and stuff. It means there's something that the prey can feed on. So once you have painted dogs in the system, it shows that there's enough space and there's enough wildlife in the system.
The biggest threats to the wild dogs are traps set by poachers. Today, Kuvawoga's anti-poaching unit is on one of its daily patrols around Hwange National Park to remove snares. 17 rangers from surrounding communities make up this team. Though the major targets of these traps are small animals pursued for their meat, painted dogs frequently get entangled in them. They are known to cover great distances in the wild as they hunt. The rangers' work would be insufficient without the support of local residents. Once a month, Kuvawoga pays a visit to the Mabale community where he meets with the village leader. They discuss their mutual efforts, knowing that collaboration is key to their success. 200 members of the community have organized a voluntary service scheme to protect the wild dogs. It's an undertaking for future generations.
Let us work together and we clear off the snails and we keep the dog safe. If we don't look after them, I tell you, we will get no more. Our young children will not know what a dog is.
In the past 2 decades, over 30,000 snares have been removed through such cooperation between painted dog conservation and communities. But to make an even greater difference, the factors that often push people into poaching in the first place need to be addressed. Here at the Igayana Arts and Crafts Center, collected wire snares find new life in the hands of over 30 artists who are employed to make different artifacts, mainly for the European market. A third of the profits, around $50,000 a year, goes to the artisans. The rest supports other conservation efforts for the painted dogs.
We're making animals through art, so we can look after our parents, we can look after our friends, we can look after our children, so that they go to school, they go to works, and then they make a living there.
Improving livelihoods is essential for conservation efforts, but so is education. Painted Dog Conservation is today hosting a class from one of the 21 schools in Hwange for a week-long program called Igayana Bush Camp. It's an opportunity for kids around the age of 11 to learn more about the painted dogs and their environment. An opportunity that's otherwise limited. As part of the camp's activities, David Kuvawoga is giving the children a tour of the NGO's rehabilitation center. Injured dogs are nursed back to health here and then released. Over 80 have already been rehabilitated and sent back into the wild.
I have learned that when painted dogs are in the wild, they mostly hunt down weaker or diseased animals. If they become extinct, there will be a lot of spread of disease among animals, which will see them dying.
All the efforts going on here are having a meaningful impact, but there is still a need for longer-term measures to prevent species like the African painted dog from dying out. The Zimbabwe Parks and Wildlife Authority has been collaborating with painted dog conservation and local communities. It believes solutions do exist and is working to implement them.
The long-term solution, in some cases, we move animals where they are more populated to where they are less populated. That's one sure way of dealing with that problem. And also, we have been working with other government departments to discourage settlements within animal corridors, expanding into protected areas.
While more still needs to be done to protect the painted dog, progress is being made here, thanks to people coming together with an eye to the future as much as the present.
Wildlife protection and preservation is a pretty complex subject, and it takes a lot of planning, patience, and even good fortune to keep things balanced. And there are a whole host of outside factors that come into play. The economic interest of industry, local agriculture, and human safety, to name just a few. We're going to review some of the success stories and describe some of the problems facing certain species and conservationists.
Who calls this place home? Some of its residents we already know, but many other plants and animals are yet to be discovered. Humans have only studied a small fraction of the estimated 8 million species that exist. 1 million of them are at risk of extinction. The main reasons are disappearing habitats, pollution, poaching, and climate change. Species are dying out at a rate and scale never seen before. It's dangerous for ecosystems, and therefore for us humans too. But how successful are our attempts to stop this mass loss of life? Let's take a look at zoos. Some see themselves as conservationists, and many animals that live there are endangered species or no longer exist in the wild at all. Like Przewalski's horses, they were bred in captivity and reintroduced to their former home of Mongolia. Today's wild population of a few hundred descends from just 12 animals, and yet genetically they are surprisingly diverse, so there's a good chance that this species will survive long term. But these success stories are few and far between. Animal conservationists estimate that only 20 species have been saved by zoos. Then there are rescue centres. On Sumatra in Indonesia, there are an estimated 14,000 orangutans left. At the beginning of the last century, there were about 6 times as many. The great apes have disappeared, along with rainforests which have been cleared for palm oil plantations. Many baby orangutans have been captured and kept as pets. In the jungle school, they learn to survive in what few protected rainforests there are left. So far, nearly 200 animals have been rescued and reintroduced into the wild here. Species can also be protected through regulation.
fish numbers are decreasing in our oceans. Small boats operating along coastlines report catching far fewer fish. Pollution and overfishing are the main reasons. Fishing quotas are an attempt to give endangered species time to reproduce. And sustainable methods such as nets with mesh large enough to spare smaller fish are intended to protect stocks. Around 30% of edible fish species are overfished and 60% are on the brink. One of the biggest problems here is that conservation agreements are not adequately enforced. And that leads us to the role of protected areas. To date, about 15% of the world's land area is protected. This has, among other things, helped to save elephants that are hunted for ivory and whose populations have been decimated. Rangers here are trying to protect them against poachers. Other animals are also safer from human intervention in these reserves. But in some reserves, elephants, for example, have reproduced so much that their numbers have actually become a problem. They require more food and space than there is, and destroy trees, fields, and even villages. One possible solution is to increase the size of such reserves. And in general, to foster intact ecosystems in which nature regulates itself. Perhaps we humans need to learn to see nature not as something to be exploited, but as something that we are part of.
Well, something that will probably never regulate itself can now be found everywhere on Earth: plastic. And while plastics have been a boom to manufacturing and production, many believe we've passed the tipping point.
Yes, Chris, the situation is very serious, but people are trying to improve matters. We have seen how companies are turning single-use items into longer-lasting things like bricks. But businesses are also collecting, cleaning and recycling other plastic items so that they can be made into the same type of products again. Our next report comes from Germany.
Around the world, mountains of rubbish are piling up. Plastic waste is especially bad for the environment because it doesn't decompose. 1 million plastic bottles are sold around the world every single minute. To produce just one of those bottles, it takes 1/4 of a litre of mineral oil. But there's one type of plastic that's cleaner and greener. Once used, PET bottles can be crushed and processed into granules, which can then be almost 100% recycled to manufacture new bottles. But how does it work? A recycling company in Germany. 400 bales of bottles are delivered here every day. One bale weighs about 250 kilos and consists of approximately 10,000 bottles. It might look like waste, but these bales have their price.
This is valuable raw material, so we have to pay for the bales. They cost roughly 300 to 500 euros per ton.
The first step is to release the bottles from the bundle and separate them on a conveyor belt. All of this waste is PET, polyethylene terephthalate, for an obvious reason.
In Germany, the consumer pays a deposit when they buy bottles. 25 cents for a single-use bottle. If they return the bottle, they get the deposit back. So here in Germany, our deposit and return system has clearly defined standards.
Reverse vending machines can be found in most supermarkets. You insert your bottle and get a 25-cent voucher in return. Germans are reputed to be world champions in recycling. 97% of bottles are now recycled here. Other countries don't have anything like the same number of reverse vending machines, so the recycling rate is far lower. The bottles are sorted not only by colour but also by material. The system recognises any material that isn't PET. For example, labels and garbage bags. In the next step, the bottles are shredded and washed at a temperature of 80 degrees Celsius. Then the fragments are stripped of any remaining residue, leaving pure PET fragments, known as PET flakes. This machine has to scan vast quantities of bottle fragments. A laser scans the pellets 1 million times per second, identifying parts that still need to be separated. This is where the machine was developed. Machine manufacturer Unisensor in South Germany. The prototype was designed by Stephanie Krieg's father, a physicist.
In this section, the flakes are sent down the channels, and at this level, they reach the laser. The laser focuses on the flake absorbs the energy and then re-releases it in the form of rays, which re-enter the machine and are analyzed by a spectrometer.
The company has already sold over 100 of these sorting machines, and sales are likely to jump. The EU wants to increase the share of recycled PET in plastic products. Not just in bottles, but products such as yogurt pots too.
The EU is aiming for a recycling quota of 25% by 2025. And they're aiming for 30% by 2030. Since 2019, we've been seeing a growing demand for recycling machinery.
The PET recycler uses high pressure to melt down the pre-sorted flakes at a temperature of 280 degrees Celsius. The process results in these granules. They can then be sold and used to make new bottles, which in turn can be recycled a number of times. Could the same process be used to recycle other products?
The main thing is to have reverse vending machines which allow us to extract pure plastics. So yes, this process could be used to recycle other types of packaging.
Bottle recycling is a well-functioning system, but if we want to reduce more of the world's waste mountains, a lot more PET packaging will have to be recycled.
Isn't it a bit crazy? On the one hand, we are being buried in mountains of waste that we don't even know what to do with. And on the other, we are destroying intact ecosystems that actually contribute to the health of our planet. But on this week's Doing a Bit, we'll see how a Moroccan inventor has come up with a way for households to save both time and energy, and it doesn't harm the environment.
Every year, Africa loses around 4 million hectares of forest land as trees are cut down, chopped up and turned into charcoal. And it's in extremely high demand, with many people on the continent still cooking over open fires, a practice that's unhealthy, bad for the environment, and fuels desertification. Mohamed Arhal from Morocco has come up with a solution, a cooker that does without gas or electricity. His priority was to ensure a simple and lightweight construction and low production costs, making it widely affordable. The Solar cooker harnesses energy from the sun. A lens in the cover consolidates the sun's rays, using them to heat the small cooking area below to 200 degrees Celsius and higher. Meanwhile, the pot's lid has a special black coating that also stores the solar energy.
Take a dish with vegetables and meat serving 3 or 4 people. In the winter or fall, when the sun isn't that high in the sky, we need 3 or 4 hours until it's cooked.
That time is halved in the summer. And there's even a specially developed app that works out how long you'll need depending on the recipe. Mohamed Arhal's cooker has already won him a high-profile Environmental Innovation Award. It's currently still only a prototype, but it's set to go into production soon, enabling more people to serve up climate-friendly treats.
And how about you? If you're also doing your bit, tell us about it. Visit our website or send us a tweet. #DoingYourBit. We share your stories.
By now, most of us know that fossil fuels are running low. But did you ever stop to think about what they're actually made of? Put very simply, fossil fuels basically consist of prehistoric plant matter that has been buried in the earth for millions of years. These days, we generate so much plant matter or biomass on a daily basis. It makes sense to find ways to convert it into clean energy without the weight. Our last report takes us to Ivory Coast to look at developments in the sector there.
It looks like plaster, but in fact, this is the residue of the cassava plant. It's fed with enzymes to produce liquid sugar. Once it is fermented, it's distilled in this machine, which takes 6 days. The result is bioethanol. For Abbé Valère, it's the fuel of the future.
Fossil fuels don't offer enough stability. The price of petrol and diesel goes up and down from one day to the next. So we don't have any control over the cost of fossil fuels. Whereas with organic farming, we can not only measure our product, we can also plan for the future.
First test drives have already been done. Now he's just waiting for the permit to produce the bioethanol. It's a known fact that vegetable scraps have lots of potential. They can be turned into fertilizer as well as fuel. Since last year, Michel Ivory has been using his own fertilizer made from organic waste from his village Nandibo. It consists of vegetable scraps, animal dung, and moss. The nutrients benefit his palm oil plantations. Michel Gaba is happy about the higher yields.
We have 4.5 tons per hectare, 4.5 to 5 tons. But these days, with what we're doing and with what we see coming, we're going to double or even triple the production. We're going to go beyond 10 tons.
Here too, a device helps, a container called a kubeko. Inside, the villagers' organic waste decomposes for a month. About 150 kilos of solid fertilizer can be produced from 500 kilos of waste. That saves hundreds of euros a year spent on artificial fertilizer. The inventor of the Kubeko box has developed models for liquid and solid fertilizer, as well as one for biogas for cooking. They can cost between 450 and 900 euros.
We need success stories so that those who are interested but who may have doubts or find the investment a bit costly will be motivated to take the plunge.
But millions of tons of raw materials still go to waste every year. It's a niche market, and Felix Ano Adji believes there are still hurdles to overcome.
Once the market is known and the demand is real, visible, or when people manage to disrupt the market, that's when production will begin. But when you know that you have to go and present products to conquer market shares in segments that are already held by the oil industry, I think that is still the Achilles heel.
But that doesn't discourage the team from Lano. They hold regular training workshops, mainly for young entrepreneurs and cooperatives. This machine that makes the fertilizer is not cheap, at around 990 euros, but it is efficient. Until now, the participants only knew traditional composting. With this training, we realized that it could create great value and that we could produce mushrooms or other products on an industrial scale. This results in an entire value chain, from the women who handle the cassava residue to the farmers and entrepreneurs. And last but not least, it's good for the environment.
Turning waste into energy, that seems like a very sensible use of readily available resources. That's all we've got time for today. Thanks for joining us, and do come back again next week. Until then, I'm Chris Alem signing off from Ogun State, Nigeria.
So long, Chris. See you next time. And to all of you, our viewers, don't forget to check in with us on all our social media platforms, where you can also share with us your thoughts and your comments. We love hearing from you. For now, I am Sandra Twinobio, signing off from Kampala, here in Uganda.